pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't like hearing details on that. I just
This is Trixie. You didn't want the technical term.
Okay. Getting a motion to approve the previous minutes.
How about the agenda?
Yeah, we're going to do that first. Thank you.
I don't see any.
I got
Okay.
an addition. Katie Dravitz is going to come from. She's our new extension educator, and I told her 9:10 around there.
Extension person.
Just give an introduction.
Yep, so she'll be an appointment then.
Right.
And then we do have one addition to the consent agenda, and that's to consider the hire of Michael Johnson as probationary jailer dispatcher D23 step 1 effective March 23rd, 2022.
This would be item 4.
Yeah.
Yes, item 4 on the consent agenda. It sounds like the background check just came in yesterday, which is the reason for the last minute update. Yes, JOHNSON.
All right, any more changes?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with those 2 additions.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve this. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right, how about approving the previous minutes from our March board meeting?
Make a motion. We approve the previous minutes from March 1st.
Second.
Okay.
A motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Public comment.
Is Bob on?
I don't see him.
I don't see him.
He planned on coming by Zoom, he said.
I'm trying to get him on right now.
Anybody have public comment?
Public comment, then we'll move on. We have that appointment, she's not here yet. How about the consent agenda? Everybody okay with that? Changes or anything you want to do to that?
What was the name of that jailer position?
Mike Johnson.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
So Donna, these are just for the signatures for all these sites, or?
Yeah, the 2 of the HOCA, there's 2 amended ones that were brought up last week to the board. And there was additional signatures that I we kind of forgot about. They were already taken over to the bank, but there was a couple that were added. And so it's just adding new signatures to the amended ones. And the other 2 for HOCA and La Crescent were additional new ones.
Oh, okay.
Discussion? Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Action items. Consider accepting a donation from the Brownsville VFW in the amount of $150 to the Veteran Service Office for any veterans' needs.
No, that's Robert, but it's a standard thing that
Yes.
they get little donations like this, and
It's for any need, so
Yep.
I move to accept the donation.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, consider approving interim use permit for Joseph and Janine Hagan to place a temporary farm dwelling in their ag district in Wilmington Township. Either Amelia or Martin. We got Amelia.
Yeah, so this one, I guess you guys have any questions on it? They pretty much kept all the conditions as proposed, which are actually like, a lot of them are laid out in the ordinance as far as term limits and familiar limitations on who can live there.
Questions?
So it's strictly a temporary living facility.
Pulling in the trailer house.
Yeah. Okay. And it meets all the standards of the books, so I've moved to approve the temporary dwelling there in Wilmington Township.
I'll second it.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No. Carries. Consider approving a CUP for Andy and Ellen Mullen to build a dwelling on less than 40 acres in an ag district in Spring Grove Township.
I had that one,
Okay,
and
Martin.
basically, the only two conditions are just the standard conditions that we add every time. Other than that, there didn't seem to be any objections, or that one went really smooth.
Is this qualified for that quarter section rule that we have in our
So it
county?
wasn't any.
With no infraction, okay.
Discussion?
And it's been taken care of by our zoning group. I move to approve the CUP for the Mulhollands.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That carries. Considering approving a CUP for Grupo Companies LLC for mineral extraction in an ag district in Winnebago Township.
The proposed, we're looking to get a CUP on the Schutz Quarry, which they're going to expand to about 7 acres as part of this particular permit. They submitted all the required documents that are required in the ordinance. We did add, as far as conditions, then there are our 2 standard ones, and then there's an additional 12 that looks like that we had proposed. The first 3 through 10 were ones that have been kind of, I guess you could call them standard language in about the last 5 years. You will see, I was asked to include, we modified a few of those, and actually the planning commission took out the last 2. And you'll see that language I was asked to include, but we had removed in the board packet. So you'll see what was struck and then how the wording was modified.
So they eliminated 11 and 12? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, so then the planning commission also eliminated 11 and 12. Those were being proposed at the request of the highway engineer. Or based upon, I should say at his request, but based upon some comments.
So you were asked to include those again?
Just for your guys' presentation. That's why.
Okay, but they're not in
Right, they're not.
the approval of the conditions that were agreed upon, set forth by the planning commission.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's an expansion of an existing quarry.
Bob?
I asked for those to be shown just because the county engineer asked for those. Planning and zoning said not to put them in, that it's already included in the ordinances. It was just the engineer wanted to reiterate those things so that there wouldn't be any future problems. And then on number 5, where it talks about the bonding and it changes it from 30 to 60 days. My question there is whether or not do we have to go to all the quarries then and tell them they got 60 days to get their bonding if it's required? You know, I
That's
don't
only-
understand why these would get a special exemption from the 30-day to make it 60 days to get the bond.
Well, that was what was asked for, but I
know.
watched the meeting last night. Had to get Andy to get the thing up so I could watch it, but that's only if the county asks for that, right?
Right.
Right.
Correct.
So if we were to ask the others, we could change it to 60 also.
Well, we either have to change it for all to 60 or they go back to 30.
Well, 60 makes more sense to me because you're going to need time to get everything to get together. So I'd suggest we change them all to 60.
That's fine.
Yep.
Long as they're equals.
Forward, I mean, it would require a lending permit, I guess, to go back on a few, but
One.
two that I know for sure.
So 3 total.
I just want to make sure we have uniformity.
Any more on this?
I move to approve the CUP for Google companies for their quarry of 7 acres as recommended by the planning commission.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carries. Okay, number 5. Number 5, consider approving the proposed 22 to 24 tentative labor agreement between the County of Houston and American Federation of the State, County and Municipal Employees. ASME Council 65 Local 2166. Yes.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Well, this is our last unit, if you will, that we've got a settled agreement with. The committee and 2 commissioners here, Commissioner Walter, Commissioner Johnson, and I, along with AFSCME, business manager and their representatives have worked very long in getting this settlement together. It is consistent with what we have done with the other units as far as placing people at the next closest step that they would have been on the 2021 initial placement grid, and then with a 2% COLA for 2022, 3% for 2023, and 3% for 2024. The difference here, that is, each contract has their own nuances. The nuance for this particular agreement is that social workers, based on the compensation study, will be placed at step 2 of the grid rather than the next closest step, which would have been step 1. And then the anniversary date of social workers will be March 1 for step placement, except for those social workers whose anniversary dates occur in January or February. So basically, that is the agreement in front of you there. And so when we talk about workers there, I don't, my apologies if that was confusing to you, workers being employees. I was borrowing the union's language as they passed a similar agreement when they ratified the contract. So it is consistent. There are no surprises in here. We were able with this round of negotiations to take out some of the language that pertained to previous contracts, such as a step placement of the first after 6 months of probation for those on step 1. It is now all after this year based on 2080 hours with employment to the next step. So with that,
Plus, I'm really glad to see they went with a 3-year agreement because they were really fighting for just 2 years for so long.
and to just as by way of a little more information, we don't have to have an MOA to set aside a previous contract because going into this, we only had a 1-year agreement. So there's no agreement to set aside. It was retroactive to January 1 of 2022.
Okay.
And yeah, so all the contracts now, 6 of them, because we had 2 units that integrated into one. And all 6 of them are on the same time frame with the same pay rates or pay scales.
Nice job, Eric. Teresa.
Good.
It was long. And
Well, we're done for a couple years.
Couple of years, that's for sure.
Mhm.
Then we'll
this
start
time
all
in
over. again.
2024, it would be ideal if we could start our negotiations early in 2024, so we have things completed prior to entering our budget season, if you will.
Yeah.
So with that, I respectfully request the board consider adopting and
Well,
approving this contract.
And just to add to that comment, it'll be a little simpler next time around because we won't have the new wage grid to contend with and to
Mhm. Yes.
work through. So should be just COLAs, correct?
Mhm.
Unless there's language that
They would
are
like.
looking-
And if we could buy language, that'd be great too. So.
If there's language we need to purchase, if you will. And I do appreciate, like I said, with all of our unit representatives, that their willingness and to work with us through some very difficult transition to a new pay system subsequent to our compensation studies. So, thank you.
Any more discussion? Anybody got any questions? Bob? Judy?
Nope.
Eric?
I move to accept the agreement between AFSCME and County of Houston.
I'll
Second,
second that.
never mind.
Bob, whatever. Doesn't matter.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carries.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Katie available?
We're good now.
Yeah,
Next is Katie.
be a good idea.
Okay. Well, we have Katie come up next. Thank you, Tess.
Good morning,
Good,
Commissioners.
good morning.
I am Katie Druitz. I'm your new local extension educator for Houston and Fillmore counties, replacing the role of Mike Cruz. So here this morning to introduce myself and answer any questions that you may have. A little background on myself. I grew up on a 6th-generation farm in Fillmore County. I got a degree in agricultural education from the University of Minnesota. Went on to work in animal pharmaceuticals. I also worked at John Deere as a technical instructor for a while, and then moved into extension, where I worked in central Minnesota in Stearns, Benton, and Morrison counties as a local extension educator there, before this position opened up and gave me the opportunity to get closer to home and get back to my roots a little bit. So happy to answer any questions that you have about where the program's going or
Last Thursday and sat next to Steve from Morrison County.
gotcha.
Yes, he spoke very highly of you, but the whole group was really sad to see you leave Morrison County.
That's very sweet of them. I truly love my job and I loved the opportunity that I got there and I'm looking forward to bringing that here.
They did give Houston County a little grief about taking Morrison County.
That was brought up about stealing from other counties, but
Yes.
hey, all's fair in love and war. So.
And then I happened to sit right next to him, so I heard about it through the whole meeting.
A little more than you wanted. huh?
But he really spoke very highly of you. He was very glad that you're with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. So yesterday was your first day?
Yesterday was my first day. Today is my first day here in Houston County. And I'm still working out what my schedule split between the two is going to look like, but it will be as close to 50% as I can get.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yep, that's good. Perfect. Well, in the coming days, we'll have, more input and what we all want. And at the extension meetings, we'll
Right.
talk and
Yeah, absolutely. And Eric has my cell phone number. Feel free to call me, text me, whatever works best, or email. I'm more than willing to chat with you.
Sounds good. Welcome.
Thank you.
So you used to work with John Deere?
I worked as a technical instructor, so I taught John Deere techs.
So if I have trouble with my GPS, you could come out and
No.
fix that?
That was a class I didn't teach. And also the amount that it has changed in the 3.5 years.
Oh, yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's not the same.
Changes.
Push the button.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't get me going. Changes.
Any more questions for her?
Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time today.
Thanks for coming.
6 then. Number 6, discuss the possibility of approving some additional ARPA funds distributions for Harold. Blew up already.
I don't know if there's anything really that can be finalized today. I just wanted to do kind of an update as to where we were. I've been trying to update the chart to see where we're at, and it looks like we've kind of allocated about $1.7 million, leaving 1.8 or so available. I think the last approval had the Microsoft licensing as 44,000, but when Andy got the updated quote, it did end up coming in at the $50,000, pretty much that we had originally talked about. That is a 3-year agreement. So are we planning on doing the $50,000 for each year from the ARPA funds, or are we just doing
What those a one-time deal?
2022
For
our Microsoft licensing?
Oh,
That's something that'll have to be decided.
okay. Well, we'll have to decide that.
Do we need to decide that now or just each year?
No, as we, finalize the plans for, how much we're going to keep and how much we're going to spend now. We make sure that we have that prior to finalizing our plan. I did on the sheet that I have, we had allocated a certain amount for highway for equipment and fleet maintenance and seal coat. And the equipment just ends up being a problem, so I moved all that just to highway projects.
So we could do more road projects and stuff like that instead.
Instead of allocating to equipment.
Yep.
Correction on that, if we move it to maintenance, we offset our existing maintenance price costs that are budgeted by this amount. We don't do more work with this amount, otherwise the budget's going to be off by that 500.
Oh, no, yeah, I get that.
Right, because we already did offset their budget with the total amount. So whether we move it to highway projects and take it out of equipment or leave it in equipment, it's still not going to have an effect on the bottom line.
All I'm saying is that we don't think we can do more maintenance projects.
Right.
Over and above.
Right.
One
We're just
offset.
allocating the money that we've set aside for highway projects to only highway projects, not to equipment. It's not additional.
Right.
Mhm.
How much did you have in there for health and human services as far as this EDMS?
We didn't have anything in there for the EDMS yet.
Okay.
John was going to get the figures together for us.
Right.
He has some stuff, John is on to talk to us. We talked about EDMS in our community services and the child-friendly room, so John can give us better information on that.
Yeah, we do have updated quotes on both the EDMS system and the child-friendly camera and recording equipment. I sent an email to board members and to Carol and to Andy on this. Work closely with Andy on both of these projects. I'll start with the child-friendly room. That's a little simpler. That was a quote that we received. Initially, we got 2 quotes last summer. the best quote. We asked that gentleman to update that quote, and it went up slightly. I think it was just under $25,000 last summer. It's a little over $26,000 this year. The more complicated question is the discussion of whether we can use our reimbursement that we typically get for these types of projects and expenditures in public health and human services. I submitted a clip from the 40-some page document that is the final ARPA rules in the brief that I sent you guys yesterday. To my untrained eye, it looks like if you call it lost revenue, you're able to use ARPA dollars for local share. The caveat to that has us kind of scratching our head is it also says that if you're offsetting state share of Medicaid and CHIP, which is Children's Health Insurance Plan, both federal programs, that you're not able to use ARPA for that. I read that to be a state obligation, not a local county obligation. But again, I'm not an auditor. So we reached out to the state auditor. They did get back to us saying that they've got their QC committee or whatever considering it, and encouraged us to reach out to the Minnesota Office of Management and Budget. What I'd recommend now is that you set aside the full amount of that EDMS project. And if we're able to find out from the auditor that we can use the reimbursement and use ARPA for the local share, it would reduce what we need from ARPA by $100,000 approximately in the EDMS project. Far less in the child-friendly room project because we get only 15% reimbursement. So our county share on that project would be about 85%. The EDMS project right now is kind of got an updated timeline. We had originally planned to do this project and make the switchover, say, the beginning of 2023, in hopes that the waivers that we've worked under in this division would kind of all have been resolved by the time we're changing the EDMS system. It's looking increasingly like that's going to happen at the end of 22 and into 23. So we're trying to step up the implementation of this project so that we're not changing the system and undoing all of the federal waivers at the same time. A lot of other counties are looking at it the same way. Certainly counties that are also migrating from the Winona consortium are all needing to make those changes and choices as well. I'm going to be meeting with those folks toward the end of the month in hopes that we can coordinate the timing of our implementation, and we would potentially be able to get some additional discounts if we do it that way. That doesn't put us in another consortium or collaborative situation like we were with Winona. We would have this software on site. Andy has assured us that we're able to support and sustain that program locally. It just would be an economy of scale for the vendor to be able to do that online and Zoom training with a group as opposed to doing it separately. So those reasons I'm hoping that we can move to action sooner rather than later so we can negotiate that contract. And right now we're shooting for an October go live for the EDMS change. Again, that's a program that's going away. We need to do something. And the good news in it is that the solution that we're recommending will be a significant annual savings with the annual maintenance agreement. Probably in the neighborhood of $40,000 annually or more will save. The other big question is whether we would be able to do a sole source procurement for this. I'm recommending that we do. This entity is the only one who has a market-ready product to meet the specifications that we have. They're also the only entity that has a real-time connection with the State Master Index, which is really an important component for kind of seamless work that we're wanting to achieve in the Economic Assistance Division. They also are the only company that offers what they call continuous delivery. So essentially what that is we buy an instance of their software, but our annual maintenance agreement also includes any upgrades to that program. That's a big deal with these types of things, as upgrades to systems can be quite expensive down the road. So that's what we found out to date. We've got those bids available in that email that I sent. Carol has copies of that as well. So hoping that we can move forward on this sooner rather than later.
And I guess it's a board decision. I think the project can be approved while we continue to work on whether it'd be 100% ARPA or if there is that. So in order to get the project going, I think the board could approve that project. The child-friendly room, did you ask for an updated quote from the other vendor?
We did not. We asked the one that we had chosen.
Okay,
there were some things, and maybe Andy can speak to, what our preferences were with that equipment versus the other vendor.
Right, you just went up over the $25,000 mark, so you have to have some kind of documentation that
I remember
maybe
that now,
contact
Carol.
them.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
And I don't think with the EDMS, I don't think it's a problem with the, best value or the select vendor, because there really isn't anything else to use right at the moment.
Right.
So we need a motion to get that project.
Not today. Do we? I mean, it's not.
It's an action item.
Well, so we're gonna approve the project, but we're gonna figure out how we're gonna pay for it later. Is that the deal here?
Well, we either have to spend
No.
$200,000 of ARPA money, or we have to find out for sure if we can request reimbursement for it.
Yeah,
So
if we can.
approve the
We're gonna have to
200,000.
spend the money no matter what, because the Winona County project consortium is going away at the end of 2024.
I know, there's no choice in that one, right?
Right, so this is what we have available, and this is what other counties are moving towards, and they can do a conversion of our current data, correct?
Correct.
So,
If we approve the $200,000 and the state is kind of gray as to whether or not we can get reimbursed for half of that or not, we're better off to avoid audit situation, just to use the $200,000 and not get into a gray audit situation.
and I'm sure with a lot of other counties using this approach, that they sent it to their quality control, and that's where they get, their recommendations and what they would look at when they're doing our audit. So by the time it comes to, making the final decision or the allocation of our funds, we'll know by then.
Are we looking at 200,000 or 220? Because we got 220 for the implementation of the project, and then data conversion is a one-time cost. So it's 220 would be the ARPA monies at this time for that EDMS.
I'm fairly confident that we'll be able to get some discounts. I know my colleagues in other counties are needing to make this move as well and are leaning heavily toward the same solution. So if we can coordinate our projects for an October implementation, we could save another $25,000. So, however, the data conversion is a separate third party that does that, which is also about 18 to 20,000. So what I put in the brief to you guys last night is full freight on the project is probably going to come in somewhere around 200,000. I'll work very hard to make sure we turn over every stone to see if we can legitimately use reimbursement first. But I agree with Bob. I think err on the side of caution. And again, this is a one-time project cost to get us into a new system. It's not a reoccurring thing other than the the ongoing maintenance agreement, which will be a significant savings to what we've paid over the last number of years with the Winona Consortium.
Do you think March 22nd, you could have additional information? And we actually put it on the agenda for then with any discounts or?
I won't have a meeting on the 31st, I believe, with this group of other counties. The vendor is committed to working with us, but our meeting with those other counties is the 31st of March. My hope is to be able to be a full partner in that and be able to say, yeah, we're moving forward with this. And I agree with Carol. It's something we have to do. It's a matter of, are we going to use ARPA for the full cost, or can we use the reimbursement we typically get, which for this division would be around 50%. If you approve $200,000 for the project and we can't get the reimbursement, or that's not an allowable use, the project is covered. If we are, then we're able to use, $100,000 less of what you allocate to the project.
So we're just talking about the EDMS now. That's not the child-friendly rooms.
Correct.
Each one is separate.
Right.
I think we need to move forward on this EDMS.
That's fine.
I move to,
Wait. Carol, is there any more that you were going to ask about as far as approvals?
I think for child-friendly, we should put that on the 22nd or 21st so that we have both of those quotes.
Okay.
Yeah, we should wait for that one.
I guess I'm hopeful that by the 22nd, we would have information regarding the restrooms, the
Why don't we just wait then?
bathrooms.
Yep.
And the boardroom technology, Andy's working on that. Has anyone contacted the Fair Board to see?
Not yet. So how much have we spent so far, or sent out so far, like to the fire department, ambulance, nursing homes?
1.7, I thought you said.
1.46,
No, the 1.7 was what we've
That's what we
budgeted for.
That we have actually,
1.7, I think is what you've allocated about.
Mhm.
Allocated, but we haven't actually sent out the money, right?
Right.
Eric is working on the updated equipment quote for the surveyor's office. We have to look at the sheriff's radios that were allocated. So what we've actually sent out is $1,116,097. And then adding back the radios, the surveyor equipment, and the highway projects, we are at 1.7 million.
Okay.
I think, if we work on these before the 22nd and do allocations then.
what about this EDMS? We do have a quote. You have a quote, right, John?
Correct.
And he
That's
said
a new quote as of,
Yeah,
Yeah, it's here.
we got it here.
I mean, that's,
you can approve the EDMS project. You don't have to specifically say we're going to
yes.
than this. It's not something that we cannot do.
Well, we don't have a
That's-
choice,
We
right?
don't have a choice.
I think that this is a big project that it needs to be done, and it's time to get it all set up. I think we ought to go forward with that one at least, because it does have a quote and
But
qualifies.
you're just approving the project. You're not
Not
approving.
approving the money, just
not
the
amending
just
the
the
project.
project,
Right.
Yeah. And looking to possibly get it all parts from ARPA. And that,
Well, looking hopefully to get a reimbursement. for
Right.
all of it, which
Is that your motion, Dory?
that's my motion
To approve the project.
for the project.
I'll second that.
Okay,
No.
we got a motion.
Okay.
One second. We got a motion and a second.
Mhm.
Okay, any more discussion? Bob?
So the motion and the second is to approve the project are we approving the 200 and the 20,000 for the conversion? Or how are you going to approve without dollar amounts?
We need to have both to 220.
So the motion is to approve up to 200,000 on the EDMS and 20,000 on the conversion?
Yes.
You agree with that, Eric?
That's fine.
Okay.
I didn't want to get in the weeds of where the money was all going to come from because we don't know yet.
You don't know.
Should you just stick with the general consensus to move forward with the project? Is that
I don't
enough
think
for
we
you?
can. I think it has to be.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, we've had a motion and we've had a second. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries to go forward on that.
And then between now and
I'll
2
work
weeks from
on-
now, you'll
I'll
have
work on
the.
Updating my list.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, it's kind of colorful, so I'll get that sent out with,
You're gonna run out of room on that list.
and
Thank
then we'll
you.
work on those other things that we discussed.
And then in 2 weeks, you'll have a quote on the child friendly, so we can move on that.
Yeah, we should be able to get that second quote. And hopefully we have some information back from the state auditor as well. So
Okay.
thank you, Commissioners.
Mhm.
Who seconded that motion?
Don't leave, Carol. Carol, I got a question for you.
Can't leave yet, she's halfway up.
I saw you leaving as fast as you could. Question for you, Carol, with regard to the budget. Now, we've approved all the union contracts.
Yes.
And how long is it going to take to come up with a revised budget showing all the revisions as far as the contracts, what they've created?
I actually have most of them in, but ask me with just being settled is of course the biggest one, but it should be probably by the 22nd board meeting.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. I guess we're gonna go to discussion items. And we'll do Lucas.
Before we go any further, can I find out who is on the meeting for 507-272-4491, please? Can you please state your name for the record?
They just got off.
All right, I'll give a call.
Somebody
Thank
from
you.
Russia.
Okay, Donna?
Go.
Okay, Lucas.
All right. Well, first, thanks for the time. Basically, it just requested this discussion based on a lot of the phone calls we've gotten. We sent out a bunch of letters explaining, the different areas that are getting value increases. So we've gotten a lot of questions and concern on that. A lot of the questions are tax related. People are concerned what their taxes, they see the percentage and they think that's the same percentage in tax. This is just a value increase. It's not a tax increase. Values are based on the market, what people are actually paying for properties, and taxes are based on levies and referendums and spending, and that's divided amongst people. So there's a pretty big difference there. I mean, you are taxed on your value, but we don't know what our budget is for next year. We don't know what the spending is. I actually talked with the state yesterday, and there is numerous amounts of legislation on tax cuts and tax breaks being discussed right now in there. So we don't know what those are going to be. There's a lot of, the message I got from the state is both the Republican and Democrats agree that our 9 point some projected billion surplus should be mostly put back into tax cuts for people. So that's what they're discussing up there right now. So if anything, this year, we do not know what the value increase is going to do for tax reasons because of all that. We do know that when we add significant value to our county, if spending doesn't change, our tax rates come down. I mean, that's been proven over the years.
It increases our tax
Yeah,
capacity
it
rate.
increases our tax capacity, and our spending is divided by the tax capacity and you get a rate. You know, like I've been telling a lot of people, a very basic example. If say our county is valued at $100,000, I mean, just using basic numbers, and our spending is $10,000, our tax rate is 10%. Now, if we add 70% to our tax capacity and now our county value is 170,000, but we still spend $10,000, our tax rate is 6%. So, you know, and then you can add a lot of value to a property, but you're taking it times a lower rate, your taxes don't change much. This year, we did do things differently. We separated out some certain areas, and that was looking at sales. There's certain areas that are selling a lot higher than others. In the past, how it was always done is a value increase was just given uniformly to everyone in a township or a city. And what has happened with that happening year after year after year, we've had certain areas that have gotten way behind on their value. And so now those people are very undervalued where everybody else in the township or city is close to value. So those people are paying close to what they should in their tax because they're valued close. The people that were way undervalued were paying significantly less in tax compared to their neighbors based on their value because they're undervalued. So when you have a property that is significantly undervalued, those people are paying less tax than people that are valued correctly. And it's the same with people that are way undervalued. They're paying less in tax, you know, than people that are accurately valued. So in an effort to of fairness for everyone in the county, we're trying to get all values uniform. I mean, that's the definition of my job, is a fair and equal assessment. That's what we're trying to do. So with pulling out certain areas this year and giving a higher increase, those areas will see a higher change in their tax. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and lie to anybody and say your taxes aren't going to change, because, you know, if one area in your township got a 20% increase and you got a 70, you are going to take on a little more of the tax burden. But over the past how many years that they've been undervalued, they've been getting less of the tax burden than they should have, and the rest of the area has been making it up. So it's in an effort of fairness. The market shows us the values of sales. I mean, I have some printouts of the areas that were the worst, and I can kind of show you or explain where the ratio was and where it is now with sales from. So each year the state does a sales study. They take sales from October 1st through September 30th of every year, and they divide our estimated market value by the sales price, and that comes up with a ratio. The state requires us to be within 90 to 105% of that ratio. So 10% low or 5% high. And if we're not, we have to issue an increase. If I don't issue the increase, the state will issue an increase, and they do it by 5% increments. I'm allowed to do it by 1%, so I can keep the ratios a little bit lower, the values. And just an example, you know, Mountain Prairie was obviously our worst ratio. I have that here somewhere.
Specifically Valley High.
Specific, I can't say that word, so
Yeah.
yes, you're right. In Valley High, if we look at our sales in Valley High, for last year, our ratio was 57.1% ratio, meaning we were, you know, 37%.
Under the 90.
Under the 90, 33% lower where we need to be. And this year, like I said, when we broke out areas, I took some time and I actually looked at each individual sale. Well, there was 5 of our 7 sales in Mountain Prairie. 5 of those 7 were in Valley High area, and that ratio was 42%. And when I looked at the rest of the 2 sales that were in the rest of the township, they were at 78%. So it shows that Valley High was the area that was incredibly undervalued, you know. So our decision, or my decision is to do a 20%
Excuse me, Luke,
countywide.
isn't that, you don't you have that backwards?
What's that?
Isn't it 70% in Valley High? Or is it, are you right there?
Yeah, Valley High was, their ratio was a 45% ratio. And the
But
rest
the
of
other two were 70%
78
in
the rest
Mount
of-
Prairie.
in the rest of Mount Prairie Township.
Okay.
So that way, we decided that, or I decided it was best to get values equalized.
Yep.
You know, because that's my job. I can't take taxes into consideration. I can't look at any of that. That's, you know, against what my oath was to have a fair and equal assessment. So with giving value increases to Valley High, I did a 70% to buildings. So that doesn't equate to a 70% increase in value because the land takes some of that value off. It amounted to about a 45 to 50% increase on overall value properties for Mount Prairie. And that, what I did yesterday is I reran any ratios that we had after I did those increases to Valley High and the rest of the Mount Prairie Township. Our current ratio now for the overall Mount Prairie Township is 92.3% on those same sales from last year. So it shows that now we are in compliance, we're above 90. And what we did was fair and equitable, and it reached our goal. Our ratio is to get above 90. I don't like to get anybody right to 100%, you know, but you do by law have to be above 90. So that's what we did in Valley High.
So in other words, a house that sold at 100,000 was valued at about 40-some thousand. Just
Yeah, I
for raw
mean, if you
numbers.
would've done
Yeah,
it that way. I mean, a
yeah.
lot of our houses in Valley High were previously valued between 160 to 180,000. I saw very common. Almost all of our sales in the last year were in that 300 to 400 some $1,000 range. So it, you know, and then the rest of the township was a lot closer, like I said, based on ratios, you know, and we, you know, spend a lot of time looking at those areas. Crescent City is another one that, you know, our ratio there was in the 70s. I took some time and looked at a lot of different areas, and some areas there were a lot lower than others. So we separate out some areas and, you know,
Like Shore Acres.
yeah, Shore Acres was one that I looked at, and their sales were pretty close on their houses, surprisingly. But their land, they had some vacant land out there that we were very low on. I mean, we had their vacant lots out there valued in the 100 to 150 range, and I mean, they're selling for 3 to 350. You know, some recent ones upwards 400,000. You know, so we just did an increase in Shore Acres to the land, vacant land, not that's improved, because those sales showed that we were pretty close out there. So
Just on vacant.
yeah, and we also did a quintile review, so we went through and reappraised every house in Shore Acres this summer. And that alone got us, you know, adjusted a lot of houses where they should be. Some went up, some went down, but it, you know, got it to a fair. And so then in the city, we also, you know, our ratio there was anywhere from 68 to 75 throughout the city for the most part. So some areas got an additional 11, some got an additional 13, you know, so anywhere from a 31 to 33% in Crescent City. And I did the same thing there yesterday. You know, I took all those same sales that was based on our ratio. And when I print that out, Crescent City is at a 98% ratio now.
Wow.
So, I mean, it shows that it's, what we're doing is working. It's getting us in compliance. I also went through and looked at recent sales that haven't even come through yet on our study in La Crescent. There was 6 of them in the last week. I looked at those, and every one of those, our ratio is 95 to 100%. So, I mean, we're right in there on the values. I realize people worry about the tax implications, but I can't consider that. It's never as bad as people think. I mean, Valley High will see a little bit of an increase in their taxes because they got a higher increase than the rest of the township. You know, La Crescent City isn't going to see much change in tax because it was an increase to the entire city. Hoka City was another one that received a 30% increase. It was to the entire city, so therefore they're not going to see a huge change in their tax as long as spending doesn't change. You know, it's,
It'll only change if, like for La Crescent, if what the city proposes for their levy.
yeah, if the city
I
city
mean, what
decides.
was their
to-
levy? That was 8% now or for 22?
Yeah, last year, or for 2022, with Crescent City, I believe raised their levy 11%.
No, it's like 7 or 8.
7 or 8, okay. So the tax in Crescent is gonna go up based on that, and it's not, it doesn't, you know, I could have lowered values in La Crescent by 33%, and because they changed their levy, their taxes would still go up.
Mhm.
So it, you know, I know it's hard to understand that for a lot of people, but that's the majority of the calls we've been getting. We encourage anybody if they have questions on their specific property, come in and talk to us. We're more than happy to explain it. We have all the sales, we have all the documentation on why we do things, why we're supposed to do things, but it is in an effort to be fair to everyone. Unfortunately, we had areas that have been undervalued for a long time that have never been addressed, and it's just continued to get worse year after year after year, and
Unless you do it.
you know, and now it's by separating out separate townships and areas and neighborhoods. I can more individualize my increases, you know, so next year, if I see sales in Valley High that are, you know, they're way over the percentage now, but the rest of the township is still right, well, I can lower just Valley High now because they're separated out, where in the past, I couldn't do that.
Mhm.
I like the idea of separating it out because, you know, not everybody's selling their house for a lot more money than these certain areas like Valley High,
Right.
Shore Acres, Brownsville, what do they call that again? Down
Marina.
Marina Drive. Are those the places you sent the letters out to? or-
Yep, we sent letters to
Okay.
anybody that got over a 20% because our county got a 20% increase countywide. So anybody that was over that 20 did get a letter kind of explain, and that was just a heads up letter because the statements come in beginning of April, you'll actually get the statement that shows, you know, what your value will go to. It doesn't, you know, and then in the fall, you will get your proposed tax, which will be based on that value that you get in the spring.
It'll be based off our preliminary
That'll
levy.
be based off of what, you know.
The county
you
sets
guys'
for their preliminary, levy,
levies.
along with the school districts
Yeah.
and the townships and the cities.
Yes, and any things the state legislature votes on, what they change, you know, they might change tax a lot the way it sounds, but we don't know.
Well,
And
things move slower up there. It
Yeah.
might be a while,
You know,
but
The biggest thing is remember it's a value increase, and that is based on the market, what people are paying. I mean, I've had a lot of people in the last week call and say, well, yeah, we had a hard time finding a house. You know, we put an offer in on 10 houses and somebody beat us to it, or they offered 50,000 over the asking price. And they finally got sick of it, and so they paid 30,000 over the asking price of a house and got one. Well, that's why our values are going up. I mean, as long as people continue to pay over market value of houses, the values will continue to go up. That's just how
Mhm.
the system works.
I applaud the extra effort you're doing to inform people and get the separating out all those extra work. It could have been a whole lot easier just to say, "Oh, everybody gets the same, whatever," but you know, doing that extra work, letting people know that it's strictly values and the tax, it's up to us about that tax part, and the city levels and all that, but the values reflect what the market's doing, and who knows what's gonna happen, how much higher, or if it's gonna reverse.
Right.
So I appreciate the extra effort getting people informed. And
Yeah.
hopefully that'll lessen the vivid discussions come those evening meetings.
Yeah, I mean, that was the goal, is to try and get most of the questions now on an individual basis, you know, for people that got the big increase. Because, you know, I understand it. I mean, you know, it affects all of us in the county when the values go up.
I sense your frustration Luke, a little bit.
Yeah, I
You're
mean,
you're
if
getting
it was-
beat down a little bit here the last week or so. It's going to get worse when the statements go out. But
Yeah,
I think majority of the people are going to realize what's going on in the market. You
and
know,
that's the biggest thing. You know, if it was up to me, I
well,
wouldn't to change values, but
yeah.
it's the state mandate and.
It's just, that's what people need to realize. This, we got state rules to follow. It's not the county. We don't set tax policy. All the thing we can control is the levy.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, like I've said before, we should try to, for the levy for 23, you gotta be very conscious
Yeah,
of the fact that we're gonna have a lot of regular increased values up there. And, you know, we set it for 3% for 22. I think we gotta try to keep it at,
Me too.
it'd be nice to be at 0, but I with everything inflation and everything going, it's gonna be
Well,
tough.
that's just the thing. I mean, does it cost the same to repair a road as it did a year ago? Does it cost the same for fuel and maintenance as it did? It doesn't. I mean, it's just the way of the world, unfortunately, you know, but, you know, with the sales too, we see, you know, just now now we're starting to see houses that sold in 2019 and 2020. People are turning around and selling those for $70,000, $80,000 increase in just a year, you know? So the market is unbelievable right now. It's a record market. And ever since they've tracked market back into the 70s, this is the highest it's ever been, so.
And there will be a correction.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't know how it can stay the way it is, but, and then, you know, unfortunately, when it does go down, our values are a year behind, so they're gonna go down a year, and it's gonna take a year for us to catch up, same as it took us a year to catch up now. So, again, I encourage any questions, don't be afraid to ask.
Anybody out there got any questions you'd like to ask Lucas?
Evaluate, sorry.
Well, we live in Valley High,
Mhm.
and I know you got a lot of very angry calls, including kind of from me. Hopefully not that. I guess my question is, well, first of all, the letter they sent out was very misleading, and we talked about that. That's part of it.
Excuse me, just a minute. Bob, can you hear him? Could you
Little
come
bit,
forward?
he's gonna have to come forward, yep.
The mic is up front
The
there.
mic is up here, so if you could just come sit next to Lucas, that'd be fine.
Lucas. So my concerns are twofold. The homes I think that sold in Valley High were the really high-end homes. And I don't know, it seems to me that the homes that have been selling are the big, fancy, you know, 350, 380, 400,000 dollar homes. So if my little house isn't gonna increase 70% when I sell it or whatever, is that increase skewed by the fact that those were the nicest homes?
So the way we appraise properties is we use age, size, and condition of the home. So if your home is indeed much smaller, much older, less anemone, you know, extravagant, it's going to be valued at less. I mean, your value still is increasing at the same percentage as those higher priced homes. Your value is just lower to start with. So, I mean, even, you know, 1970s ranch house, you know, in our county, well, Caledonia City is a good example. Those houses, you know, they're all in the 70s and they have your basic linoleum floors and basic cabinets. Those houses a year ago were selling for 130, 140. They are now selling for over 200,000 for those same houses, you know, and so now they're valued at 200,000, but that house that was valued at 300,000 before now is valued at 500,000. So the percent increase is warranted, but if you're a lower value home, you're still going to be a lower valued home compared to that higher valued home. It's just the market shows that all houses are increasing. Old, new, you know, beat down houses or whatever are all increasing by the same percentage. And so that's where, you know, you're not just, if your house was $70,000 before, you're not now all of a sudden going to be 400,000 just because those houses are selling for 400,000. You're going to be where you should be based on what that house would sell in the market. It's how it works. It doesn't just put everybody up to what the sales are. It puts people to what your house would be if you were to actually sell it today in the market.
So the price, the 20% of 100,000 is different than 20% of 200,000.
Right.
So the lesser valued house that's currently at 169 or whatever, may be going up to maybe 200,000 with that 20% adjustment. If it's worth 299, 20% of that is a bigger increase. So,
Right.
so the fancier homes are getting a bigger increase in value,
Yes,
and us modest ones are getting some. It's the same percentage, but it's a smaller amount.
correct.
Is that fair assessment?
Yeah.
And my value went from 172 to over 300,000. Seems like an awfully extreme jump in 1 year. I understand the value increase, but imagine the shock when somebody says, oh, by the way, today, your house is worth 172,000. Tomorrow, it's worth 305. Imagine that letter comes.
I get it, I get it, yeah.
Okay, I mean, right?
I just, to stick, I work with my boss. If you, when you get your valuation statement and it has the value on it, if you truly think that you could not sell your house for that amount of money, we will come and look at it.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Okay.
They will
We
come
and
out,
Look at every house in the county that we have to.
Reappraise.
you're gonna be
If you
busy.
don't think your value- If you don't think you can sell your house for that, give us a call.
Yeah. And I encourage anybody, when they get that, to, look into the market. If you've ever used the Beacon Snyder website, we just put on there our yearly sales under our layers, so you can click on the yearly sales and it'll show all
Your
houses that-
neighbors or all around in
that's
the
sold.
neighborhood.
And I encourage you to look at only the sales in the last year, because it does show back to 2017. Well, 2017 to 2020 aren't real accurate on what this market is doing. You gotta look at 2021, and even 2022 is on there now. And those are the ones that show the accurate market of what somebody will pay. I mean, the market is based on supply and demand. And that's what people are paying. I myself personally, my property went from 150,000 to 354,000. But my property's worth that. I could easily sell it for that right now in this market. 2 years ago, no way I could have sold it for that, but now I can, so.
That's what's a little frustrating with how the state Department of Revenue relies so heavily on sales, because 90% of us own our homes to
Right.
live in. We don't own them to sell them tomorrow.
Exactly.
So that's the frustrating part as a taxpayer, is that, we're being valued here on the fact that we could sell it tomorrow for that, but we're not going to do that. This is where our home, this is where we're going to live. But I think that's an argument for the state to have to deal with.
Just a comment, if you were to decide to refinance your mortgage, you're going to appreciate that higher value.
Well, right.
It all kind of circles around.
Right, but it's still, it's a policy from the state that should relook at that, because the state policy is the most complicated policy in the country.
Yes.
So it would be nice to have a little more simplified tax code in the state of Minnesota.
Yeah, the state of Minnesota is the most complex tax system in all of the United States. We have over 170 different tax classes, where the next highest state is 8. So it's, and the thing with Minnesota is every time they make a new tax law, they don't replace another one. They just,
Keep adding.
They add on to it. They
Adding.
don't get rid of one, they add to it.
and then they say, well, this, but if this, but if that. The state of Minnesota is the only state that has a tax rate for one individual property, because they went to the legislative and argued, and they approved their own tax rate. So, it's quite ridiculous, but, and that's the tax side of it. I do the value side, and my job is pretty straightforward. Watch the market and adjust the values to it.
Bob has his hand up.
You got a question here.
I just had a question for the gentleman from Valley High. From the perspective of your property going from 172 to 305, do you think you could sell it for 305?
No, I think realistically, 270, 275 is probably a reasonable price that I would expect to get for the house. And I agree, it was definitely undervalued before. No doubt. My other question is, and I don't understand the tax thing. So tax rates, let's say 3%. Is that a number?
Yeah. The
Okay.
county portion is
The county levy was 3%
Increase.
increase.
Yeah, I believe Valley High's tax rate is 1.55, I think,
Okay.
That's current.
at current. And then I worked with Carol in the finance, and it's just that if nothing in the world changed it other than the values, the tax rate next year was like 1.2 or 1.1 in Valley High. So it's like almost a 40% decrease in the tax rate. But again, that's not accurate because we don't know anything about what 2023 taxes or levies or
That's given if
legislation.
everything stayed the
If
same.
anything stayed exactly the same as it is
Right.
today and just increased the values,
Yep,
the tax rate was dropping by over 40%.
because of that's the capacity rate.
Because we increased the value so much, but didn't change anything else.
Yep.
I mean, I don't like to, give people estimates on their taxes based on that because
That's,
how is it not going to change? I
yeah,
mean,
I wouldn't advise that because we don't
Yeah.
know.
But the main point of it is the more value we add, if spending doesn't change much, the rates come down. It's the same. Everybody's responsible for the same amount of tax. So if you need $10,000, that's divided amongst everybody. If you raise values $5 million and you still need $10,000, that's still divided amongst everybody.
Depends on the size of the pie.
Right.
If you got a big pie or a big levy, we all pay a percentage of it.
Yeah.
A little bit smaller pie or keep the pie the same, but it's all divvied up
Yeah.
by values. And, we have the control of the levy, hopefully some, but the values are controlled by the state.
Yeah. And next year, if the sales come in and say, well, Valley High now is 10% too high, well, then I can lower values by 10%. But right now, if I don't put them where I put them, the state will come in and they will put them there. And instead of that 96% that I have them at, the state will add 5% to that. Now they're at 101%. So now everybody out there is overvalued by 1%. So that's how it works. That's the state policy, whether I agree with it or not, that's how it works.
But then you do reassess. If somebody requests a reassessment, yeah,
definitely,
and that
yeah.
there is kind of what we're at now to take care of things. Because
Because, that's why we go around every 5 years and look at properties, but we don't always get callbacks. We don't always get in. And so if we can come and look and, if we look at your house and say, well, yeah, they don't have this, our records say we have it, or, we have that, they have fancy cabinets and you don't. I mean, because if we don't get in a house, we have to make an assumption.
An estimate,
I mean,
yeah.
That's our job. So the more people can let us in or call us back, the better off they are with their values. The more accurate information we have, the more accurate value we get.
Our concern at Valley High is we don't want to open our tax thing next year and say, oh, it was $2,000 last year, now it's $5,000. Now it's, there's a lot of discussion about that. And as I said, the letter was somewhat misleading, and that's neither here nor there. Now we have the information that's.
Yeah, and
corrected.
the letters, like I talked to them, I apologize, they weren't more individualized because it was a
General.
general, so it was basically heads up, when you get your statement, this, because normally you don't get the letters. It was just trying to get everybody aware of, there's a change coming this spring, make sure you look at that notice.
And I think that's a good thing that you did that,
Yeah.
just to give people a heads up, because a lot of people don't look at those statements until they have to pay their taxes. And
Yeah, and then it's too late. Now, like Kelly said, if you absolutely think your house is worth $275, we can definitely come and look at it and see if, it is, you had some wrong information or we agree, so.
And the tax implications between 275 and 304 negligible.
Would be-
So it's not.
it would be.
Well, and yeah, but the tax implications between 175 and 274 could be, we don't know, because it's based on spending from year to year.
And then-
They probably will taxes out there probably will go up just because now Valley High is taking more of the
The
tax burden
burden.
of Mount Prairie.
versus
Because
other parts
in
of the
past, they
township.
were much more undervalued than the rest of the township. So there, Valley High is going to see an increase in their tax versus the rest of the township. We just don't know what that is at this point.
Right.
Because they are taking on more of the value. But in the past, they've had a lot less value than they should have. So it's all in an effort.
It's reshifting the burden.
Yeah.
There's a misconception on the tax, sorry, Bob, there's a misconception on the tax valuation increases that, oh, crap, the county's gonna get in all this extra money. No. We ask for a pie, certain number of dollars, and that gets spread out. It's not like a sales tax. So it's not gonna bring in a whole bunch more revenue than we expected, so.
I understand that, just that wasn't really clear, so.
Yep.
We had a lot of questions internally within the Valley High community of what on earth are they really telling us? So I think we have the answer for that.
And that's what we appreciate, the calls and, the letters. Got a lot of people to call us, and I was able to explain a lot of things to people. So that was the goal. I appreciate the calls. We appreciate the feedback for sure, because that's the whole.
And I didn't yell or say any bad words.
Congratulations.
You were that guy, baby.
Sir, may I get your name for the record?
Stephen Doolittle.
No,
For a
Not on my
Packer,
record, is it?
for a Packer fan, that's
Oh, yeah.
pretty good not to get angry or.
well, all these Viking fans, I'm not.
Well, you know why Iowa don't have a football team?
The Minnesota want one.
Bob, you,
Is there any more questions for Lucas? Yep, Carol, come on up. You gotta come up. Could you come up here, Carol, so we can hear you?
I'm Rosemary Norna, and I live in Brownsville Township and supervisor there. I spoke to Lucas last week about this, and just listening to this today, I'm wondering if the Board of Adjustment meeting, since Swanview and Brownsville Township was one of those places where they're going to see the 20% initially for the houses. And then because it was parsed out, as Marina Drive was, we're gonna see the additional 20, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm anticipating the Board of Adjustment meeting for us on May 10. We're gonna be people there,
Probably we've talked to several people from down there already.
and
based on-
can we anticipate help from you guys with that?
Oh,
Because
definitely, we'll be.
Yeah,
there.
you'll be
And-
there to
and
answer this.
Every area that had over the 20, I'm
Mhm.
gonna make sure that I'm at those meetings. We purposely didn't schedule those at the same times, because we do have meetings at the same time, but anybody that had over a 20, I will be there to, take as many questions as I can. If the meetings go long, I'm fine with that. It's all about the education of the process.
There you go.
so Luke, when you give us a copy of your appointment schedule for the townships to us commissioners, so we could go there too, just,
Definitely.
yep.
Yeah, we have them all scheduled now, so I can send that schedule to everybody. So everybody will
Sounds
have
good.
it.
should post it on the website also. So my other question that I thought of when the presentation was going on is that it's the assessments are done every 5 years, and this past year seems to be a spike. Supply and demand, interest rates being low, but if you look at the volatility in the world right now, and fuel prices for the spring, and fertilizer prices for the spring for farmers, and what's next year going to be like, if this doesn't resolve itself in Europe. Waiting 5 years to do the reassessment seems to be like a long time.
So the 5-year reassessment is just, we do that to make sure our information is correct every 5 years on homes. This sales study and the value increases based on the market is done yearly.
Okay.
That's done every year.
Okay.
So currently, we started a new cycle since October 1st. We've been on a new cycle, and like I said, those are the ones that I checked these values against yesterday, sales from October till now, and every area in our county right now, we're in the 90% range, every single area, which is unheard. But hopefully it does, then we wouldn't see any increases next year.
So the other question I think of is that in an area of farms out in township where you don't have sales, then we're sitting with that assessment for that length of time before getting readjusted unless individuals go to the township or the county to ask for it to be reassessed?
There normally is a fair amount of sales. I mean, we have a lot of land sales every year. We average between 20 to 35 land sales every year in the county. And when we look at other counties, we do look at Fillmore County, Winona County somewhat. If we don't have enough sales, we do. I've had a lot of conversations with Fillmore and Winona County on their values. They're also increasing. Fillmore County's going roughly about 30% to their residentials. Winona is, I think, 25% to their residential. Our ag land went up to 7,600 or no, 8,600 an acre. Winona went to 9,000 an acre. So we try, and that hasn't really been done much in the past, trying to be similar to our neighbors, too. And we've been working hard on that too. Just trying to get a fair assessment for everyone.
Okay, that answered my question.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for your conversation last week. Thank you.
Anybody else got anything? Otherwise, we'll move on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Luke.
All right, we'll go to the board updates, board chair. Well, it's Township Tuesday. Make sure you go vote for your township elections today.
And then the budgeting goes on tonight.
Yes, exactly right.
I was gonna comment to that this is the time for them to set up what they want to pay next year.
Right.
Yep.
People set their own
Levy.
in-house.
That's about all I got for my updates. I haven't had no meetings to speak of, I guess. I think I had a meeting with a union rep last Saturday for a couple hours, but we'll talk about that in a workshop.
Good.
Anything else? All right, then we'll go on to who wants to start? Dewey?
Well, I had the yesterday meeting with the Parks Committee, reference to Wildcat. We're drafting a new contract. Now, Donna can fill me in because I wasn't able to write down my notes as I was not in a place to do that. But as I remember, we're going to look at getting liability insurance added to the contract with the person that handles things down there, looking to get the credit card application available for making reservations. Discussion as to if so we're managing the possibility of taking care of things, and if we don't get a contract with the current purveyor, that if we have to hire, what are going to be responsibilities? It's a long list of things that came up, but hopefully within the next, was it 2 weeks, Donna, that we wanted to try and have something available for us to review?
Yes. Oh. Yep, that's correct. Right, I had made a phone call to the current manager, and he is currently not available. He's having some health issues, so we will. I've been waiting till this afternoon and meeting with Jake's daughter, and then she will. We will discuss some things, and then until I talk to her, I probably don't want to say a whole lot because I want to give them a chance to, offer up what we are requiring from the county. So I'm kind of just waiting to hear from Kim Sheehan.
So we should be able to have something together within the next couple of weeks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, we have to because we have to get working on it so we can get the contract ready, because the contract begins on May 1st and goes through October 31st. So we have to get something in place. And Tess and Sam, our county attorney, are both we're both at the meeting, and they will be drawing up something to meet our requirements that we think the board would like to see. And then the board will have to approve it, and then we'll go from there. So it's going to take a little time, but we're going to have to move pretty quickly on it. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. And then this morning we had Community Service Committee and pretty much discussion about the EDMS. And then COVID is was talked about because it's kind of on its way out, but percentages are down. Transmission levels down. So we're in the low to medium risk area at this time. So we have to remember it here. Coming up here in the next few months, I'm going to try and spend about 10 minutes at our meetings. The schedule is in March, April, May of talking about what public health is doing and the community service group. So John and his team is going to kind of give us ideas of what's happening with economic assistance, public health, social services, accounting. Each meeting, just a few minutes, and then we can open it up for questions from the board. Rob from Veteran Services had some discussion about open door electronically out there, and they're still in the talking stage of that, so I shouldn't say too much, but we want to make sure that the facility is open when people are there, not all the time, because that was kind of the concern. And unfortunately, our vehicle will be a couple more months before they get their vehicle.
Is this a new one?
Yes. Did I miss something, Robert?
No, that was very good.
All right, Eric.
I attended the AMC last week Zoom meeting for Environmental Policy Committee. Main discussion was on the 404 exemption for counties that do road projects and to streamline it for wetland rules and stuff. It doesn't negate any of the rules. It just makes it more streamlined. They're slowly getting there to get that approved. It's been in the works for like 3-4 years. Ever since I became a commissioner, they've been talking about this. So wheels of that turns real slow, but they're getting closer now. They had a big presentation. That was the main focus on the meeting that day. So we'll see what happens there in the final. Had the land use meeting this morning.
I'll let you talk about.
Well,
that.
no, you can talk. You
No,
probably you do better at it than I do. But we had a couple of quotes, bids for the comprehensive land use plan, and we're going to set up interview dates to interview these two companies. They're both very good companies. Price was anywhere from 66 to 80 some thousand. Got to looking at the 66, and there's some steps that if we wanted to do what the other company was doing for 80, it would cost that much. So it's pretty close.
It's pretty close, and they're both very good companies.
Right. So
Recommended from Brian especially.
Yep. So that's in the works for that. In the future, coming up quick here to set dates for interviews. Maybe you want to talk about the airport deal?
No, go ahead, because I got a whole long thing on the legislative conference.
Well, that's a little confusing, so I don't really want to touch on it until we get
Probably
some.
not. They're gonna meet tomorrow to discuss.
Yeah, it's out of my league, but that's in the negotiation part yet. Greg, you probably know more about it, but.
That's exactly right.
And then,
Southridge, I don't know.
well, that I talked about that last meeting, the Southridge Road project is, they've decided on a project now of, but they keep changing their mind too. So it's, I don't want to be quoted on what exactly they want to do yet. So I don't really want to comment on that anymore either until they get a final decision made. So it is in the works here. So hopefully by the end of the week, they'll have more clarity on what they're going to do there.
Is that going to be bid for this year's work, or
Well,
are we gonna try and get it in, or?
What's talked about is going to be done in 2 phases. One phase this year, and then the next, they got the okay from the state to do it in 2 phases, so they could do the other phase the next year. So,
All right.
I think that's all I can think of except for,
And Amelia brought up about the,
the boat
boat
houses.
houses.
Yeah.
we have to have a resolution on file at the county so that it has to be in our records, a resolution about sizes and of the boathouse, and if they want to
Well-
replace it, they can't go any bigger.
Yeah, the resolution is that we don't have authority over the boathouses. That's DNR and Army Corps.
Right.
So it's just a resolution saying that we do not have authority over what they're doing there. They're asking Amelia for all the sizes of that. And I'm thinking, well, why do we need to do that if we don't have the authority of,
Yeah, we don't have
we're
the
trying to do
authority,
their homework
and
for them?
We don't do permitting.
No, so they're talking to Winona County to see what they do, so they'll work on that. And she's gonna talk with Eric Sue about some imaging and stuff, so. But there was never a resolution on file.
No.
So that's something that's required by statute,
Mhm.
and that was brought to their attention, so they'll be coming up with that. in the
And they're
future
working with
meeting.
Sam and.
Yeah.
Oh, is that it?
Yep.
Bob?
So 2 questions there. Eric, you mentioned the airport. What about the airport? That I haven't heard?
Well, Brian brought up the fact about making an offer on land or whatever to talk with them and what the feds say and what they say, and it's
Okay.
it's still in negotiation from what I understand.
Right,
So
okay. The meeting with Irvin is coming up tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah.
And then with the boat houses, do they pay any taxes at all? Any personal property tax or anything on those?
nope,
No.
They
no,
should.
Oh, they don't.
They
No,
should.
they're federal.
they're on water, Bob.
They're on the river.
I know there's no land, but there's something called personal property.
No,
What's
no,
the
they
personal property tax? I don't know.
They're not taxed, correct?
Mm-mm.
Luke and Kelly said they're not taxed.
Mm-mm.
Do they have to get a permit? to have a
Nope,
boathouse
they-
there
nope,
every
they
year?
don't have. They don't.
Well, yeah, from the Army Corps. From what I understand,
But not us.
they cannot expand. They have to stay within their footprint, and that's part of the deal. They have to do this
Right.
size look at to see to make sure people aren't expanding their boathouse.
Right. They
So,
can build within the parameters of what's there now
correct.
and replace
Yes.
what's there now. Can't make it
Yes.
any bigger. But you look at some of those.
And they
that have
can't
been
add one
expanded,
too.
You
Go
look at
ahead.
some that have been expanded, they're beautiful. I mean, they're huge. People live there all summer long in their boathouses. They got air conditioning, they got the portable potties up above.
Yep.
I mean, they're better than a lot of the houses around the county. But they don't have to pay any tax. It just seems to me
Nope.
that
That's federal water.
they're on water, but they're still in the county.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as my report, last week we had the Selco meeting with Greg Davids. That was a feel-good meeting about asking for more money. That was all that was. No response otherwise. And I had a couple meetings yesterday that I did not make it to. The kidney stone took priority, so I'm not at your meeting today either, but better days are coming. That's all I got.
Take care.
They're miserable.
All right, Teresa?
Well, I went to the legislative conference last Wednesday and Thursday, and I made a few small notes so that I wouldn't take up too much time. We were assigned to go with Fillmore County to visit Greg Davids at noon, met with him. And then in the afternoon at 3, we met with Jeremy Miller, and that was along with Winona County also.
I saw the picture.
Oh, okay.
It was in AMC email there.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yep.
But yeah, and they were kind of the feel-good things too. I actually took along, I found all of Bob's notes from when Greg was here, plus our notes. Carol, did you get that email about that House file for the Department of Revenue with that tax liability?
Right, I did just want to maybe clarify whether that $50,000 was per year or was it per tax abatement? Because we typically have under $50,000 for a tax abatement, but like, you know, the Northern Natural Gas, we ended up paying them $75,000 because we had so much per year. It was for 2 years, plus we have to pay the interest.
Right.
So, you know, a little clarification on the level that they're actually going to be paid.
I mentioned you when I met with Greg, and he said if you have any questions on where it is, you should contact him.
Yeah.
So that's why I got the House file. Hasn't gone to the Senate yet.
Right.
So, but he's very hopeful because Fillmore County also brought it up, which is a good
I
thing.
would think every county.
Every county has a problem with it, but we're meeting with Fillmore. This is a bonding year. So far, the Senate hasn't even started talking bonding. But the House is working on it. And there again, Fillmore County was very concerned about being a bonding year and how much they need for their bridges, roads, et cetera. So they were very vocal about that. We talked to them, they're working on all kinds of tax relief. But property tax isn't included in any of their tax relief. And then all three counties brought, that's where we need the tax relief of that 9 million. And the only way we get property tax relief is through CPA. That goes to everybody.
So if they would double their CPA to all 87 counties, that would help in
Exactly.
tax relief for our because then we wouldn't have to levy that.
Exactly.
Right now, we're at 1 million, little short of it,
Yep.
A little over.
little over.
Mhm.
So if we could get another 1 million out of them,
But they won't even discuss it this year. It'll be discussed next year. Well, that's, and everybody, it was like, really, we need property tax relief. That's the only thing that affects everybody in the county, every property owner. So there's
They
a
have-
lot of discussion on that. We brought up about the probation funding, the DOC, how most counties only get between 10 and 15%.
Each county gets a percentage.
No,
based on the
well,
amount that they
according to
spend.
what our legislator said, they're treated equally around all the counties for some reason. So they're reevaluating that whole program because we're supposed to get 50%.
Well, up to.
Up to 50%. I know. Oh, yeah, they always say that. Talked about PIL funding, which they are definitely working on. Went to the state extension meeting, and there again, I brought up that I sat next to Morrison County Commissioner. And everybody, there's a lot of counties looking for educators. In fact, 4 counties are now working together to share an educator and an assistant to that educator to cover 4 counties.
Wow.
And stuff, and sharing the cost. And which we do with Fillmore. you
Right.
know. But there's a need for them too, because a lot of if they don't have a full-time educator, they won't even get applicants.
no, it's hard to get
Because you don't
part-timers.
have benefits.
Yeah, the benefits. are
So
the big
they're
thing.
really reevaluating a lot of that. 4-H awards went out to Douglas, Rice and Swift County 4-H troops. So it's very good, very interesting, some of the projects they are doing. The one from Swift County, we did a fair building, which is all these little girls up on the stage. You're going, how did you do all that? But they, well, of course, their parents. But then my policy with health and human services, they're getting a lot of talk on child welfare, family first, home visiting, funding. The state's really looking at giving more funding for public health, for home visiting to keep people out of nursing homes. They're redoing the MAXA modernization. They have a private independent company doing the evaluation called Gartner Current Assessment, because they're antique, their computer systems are at the state level that the counties depend on. So they're redoing that whole thing. And then The Shack Committee is getting $6 million grant from the state for, that's your statewide health improvement program, so that's gonna go up. That's it in a nutshell. I could go on a lot, or I do have 6 pages here. I tried to, concise it.
Did they say anything about cutting social security tax?
Yes, that is a definitely big consideration by both the House and the Senate. There's only 6
Well,
states.
the House is against it right now. aren't
Well,
They say
according to
that's,
Greg, they weren't against it.
well, but the majority, I guess, is against it.
The one thing everybody's against, it seemed like, is that gas tax.
Oh, the gas tax holiday,
Because
that
all
was
it does is
proposed
hurt
by the House
everybody's
majority.
homes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Really. So, but no, Davis is really for that. He says there's only 6 states in the union that have social security tax.
Mhm.
Well, we paid on it once, that way we
Yep.
shouldn't have to pay twice.
I know. So it sounded like both of them, according to the 2 people we talked to.
Forget social security.
So when you met with David's, you went to his house
He
building? or-
came to a conference room.
So is the house still closed to the public?
Yes.
I remember he was here and he was
Yes.
saying that the Senate is open, but the House is still
Senate is
closed.
open, but the house is still closed, but they thought it was gonna all open this Monday.
Oh, okay.
So, but when all the mandates came down. So he met with us in a conference room, and all of Fillmore County was there. Well, no, except for Mark. But, and Marcia was the only one from Winona County.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Closing public comment. Anybody in the public got anything to say? Okay. Well, I guess we're kind of looking for somebody to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
A motion, second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed. Thank you, guys. Thanks for everybody coming.